Today we will be learning A-level biology biodiversity for the exam board Edexcel. And let's get straight into it. So our learning objectives for today is knowing what biodiversity is, understanding how biodiversity can be shown when they will give you two examples, and being able to use the index of diversity. Now, these are, of course, taken from the exam specification, so these are very important objectives for you to know by the end of this lesson. Biodiversity is the variety of living organisms in a given area, and the examiners of Edexcel want you to show that you know what biodiversity is using two key terms. The first key term is genetic diversity. This is a measure of how different a species is from other members of the same species. So, for example, you can see here in this little diagram I have of these sheep. They're all sheep, however, they're different kinds of sheep. So, you'd say this is a highly genetic diverse group of sheep. Now, species richness is a measure of how many different types of species there are. So, we're measuring the biodiversity of the species, how many different types of species there are in one given area. And now, as you can see here, I've added a little funny joke here. I'm so rich, I can afford all these species. So, species richness, rich, you can have more than one type of species, as genetic diversity has only got one type of species. Okay, so here's a quick recap of literally what we just went over. So, here, what will the biodiversity be like? And I'm gonna go show the answers. Here's the answers. And here's the second picture. What will the biodiversity look like here? Here's the answers. And now we are on to measuring biodiversity because we can say there's high genetic diversity, however, we don't know how high, and it will be harder to compare it to other habitats if we just have words. So, this gives us a number to be able to compare it to other habitats. So here's our formula, and please keep in mind in the AS exam, you won't need to memorize this formula as it will be given to you in if they ask you about it. However, for the A2 A level exam, you will not be given this formula. You will have to remember this formula. Please keep that in mind as lots of students forget that it won't be given to them. Okay, so let's break down this formula. Capital N is the number of all organisms. So we can see here through the on the table species column there are 1, 2, 3, 4 species. So the total number of all organisms is 4. And lowercase n is the total number of organisms in each species. So that's just the second number found column in the table. So there's 7 sheep. So n for sheep would be 7, and so on. Now, for those of you that have never come across this symbol before, this symbol means the sum of. So that would be adding all of n bracket n minus 1. And to show what I mean by this, we're going to make a new column in this table for the denominator of our equation. So let's start with lowercase n minus 1. N minus 1 for sheep would be 7 minus 1, which is 6. For cows, 8 minus 1, which is 7. For chicken, 4 minus 1, which is 3. Rabbit, 2 minus 1, which is 1. Now we have n minus 1. However, we want to find the sum of, as we can see from our formula, n bracket n minus 1. So we need to multiply all our values in this column we just made by n. So we're going to make a new column here, n bracket n minus 1. So that's going to be 7 times 6. 42. 8 times 7, 56. 4 times 3, 12. 2 times 1, 2. Now, as we have got all of lowercase n bracket n minus 1, we can find the sum of this and get our whole value for our denominator. If we add all of these values together, we get 112. Now that we have our denominator, we can add this into our equation to find our diversity index. So our denominator is going to be 112, and our numerator is going to be capital N, which is 4, times by 4 minus 1, of course, over 112. This gives us 0.12 as our diversity index, rounded to 2 decimal places. Now, the second piece of maths you would need to know for this topic is the heterozygosity index. This is what we use to measure genetic diversity. Remember our two keywords? Diversity index was to measure the species richness. However, the diversity index is to measure how diverse a single species is from their siblings. Here we can see the formula: number of heterozygotes over number of individuals in the population. Thank you everyone for your efforts in attending today's lesson. Try these 3 questions and mark it and have a good time studying. Goodbye.